Okay, welcome back to the Recruitment People podcast, episode 16. I've got Trish Seal here with me, who's our new recruitment consultant here at the Recruitment People. And we're going to be talking today about job hunting in the real world, what no one tells you. And Trish, obviously, having recently joined us, is the perfect person to have that conversation and tell us what it's like to be job hunting. So, thanks for coming on. Thanks for allowing us to do the recording, Trish, and for you sharing your information. So I suppose tell us about your experience, your own job hunting experience recently. What made it tough, and maybe what surprised you?
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited. So, a little bit about my experience, Kelly. I think job hunting is really hard. And as a recruiter, we obviously are on the other side, and I got to experience now, job hunting and looking for a job. And I got to experience a little bit of what our candidates get to experience on a daily, just looking for jobs. I think what really surprised me is definitely the emotional turmoil that goes through, the process of applying for jobs, not hearing anything back, and just really trying to go through the process. That was really, really hard. But I think what I experienced was I needed to be a bit more proactive, and I started reaching out to people directly because that does also help. But some people do respond and some people don't. So yeah, my experience was somewhat similar to what the candidates go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously going through that process, reaching out yourself. So were you sending out resumes to recruiters and applying for jobs, or did you start with just applying for jobs and then reaching out to recruiters, or how did you go through your process and deciding what to do first?
So I started sending out resumes first. I think because I already sort of like had connected with a few recruiters and connected with a few managers from different businesses, I started sending out my resume and applying for jobs at the same time. But I didn't wait for jobs to be put up because I understood that some jobs are not advertised. So it is important to also just try and reach out to managers and just put your CV out there, put your name out there, so that they remember you when they have any jobs available. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
did send out a few CVs at first, and also applying, but it's more effective when you are sort of like managing both and keeping a tracker. That worked out for me.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important point to note for particularly for candidates who are looking for work, job seekers, because a lot of them don't realize that there is a hidden job pool or job market out there where, for example, a recruiter has a role speaking to the network, don't actually advertise the role, and unless you're in it, you're not going to win it by being part of that talent pool with the recruiters and even with people employers, not just recruiters, they reach out to people they know sometimes before they run adverts. So again, if you're not reaching out directly to people or maybe on LinkedIn, having conversations with people or companies you want to work for, you don't actually know there's a role going there and they're not advertising. So that's then that hidden job market, isn't it?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So it is important, I think, when you also searching to do a little bit of research.
Mm.
Sometimes it is on the websites. Sometimes you have these companies in mind that you would like to work for, and you're not really connected to them on like the search portals. So important to just do a little bit of research so you know who to reach out to, and you reach out to the people that can actually help you. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And how did you stay motivated? I mean, obviously, when nothing's working as a job seeker, it can be quite demotivating, not hearing anything back, applying for lots of jobs, and just feeling like you're getting nowhere.
Yes, I stopped taking it personally. I think sometimes you don't hear back and you're like, oh my gosh, is it me? Did I do something? Did I say something wrong? I
It's
think
not you,
just
it's me.
I think just changing it up a little bit and just redirecting your focus. And maybe if you're not hearing back, is there something wrong with my resume? Can I go back and revisit that and tweak a few things? Especially when you're applying for jobs, it's so important to just check your resume in comparison to the advert. If they're looking for a sales exec, Do I have anything on my resume that says I'm a sales exec? If there's nothing there, then chances are I'm not going to hear back. So it is very
Yes.
important to just sort of like redirect your focus a little bit. And if you're not hearing back, where can I, fix my resume? Where can I tweak and fix my emails? And yeah, basically that's what I did. Just redirected my focus a little bit, just to make sure that I work on me,
Yeah.
and what I need to do, to make sure that I get some responses and some traction
Yeah.
to my, yeah.
I mean, there's some practical tips right there for job seekers who are looking for work. But I mean, are there any other practical tips you can add, for job seekers right now who may be looking?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you sort of like applying for jobs, it's so important to also remember relevance. So, like again, I can't be applying for a sales exec, and a sales exec role is being advertised if I don't have that experience, and it's I'm maybe doing data analysts, and I'm doing something completely different. So it
Yeah.
is important to make sure that my resume is relevant, but it also is important to just make sure that I keep a sort of like a tick box, or like a tracking sheet, of where I have applied so that I'm able to follow up. And that will help you as well in just really searching, just following up, keeping like a tracker,
Yeah.
that will just help guide you a little bit.
And I always think it's good to follow up. I'm obviously a recruitment consultant myself, and candidates who follow up with me, you have to respond, you have to give them the feedback, and they actually go to the top of the list because they've asked you the question, you've got their name at the forefront of your mind out of 30 other candidates that have come through. So I do think it's important to follow up. Do you think you should follow up on every role? Like, how important is the follow up in your recent experience, do you think?
I think it's so important to follow up. In my recent experience, I followed up with the people I was communicating with. If there were any changes in my resume, then I would let them know that, hey, actually I've added to this, and these are the
Yeah.
changes. So that they also knew that, oh, Trish has added like a new certificate on her
Okay.
resume. She's added a new skill, and maybe this is her experience now. So it is important to just follow up and make sure that the people you're working with are reaching out to you, also stay updated with what is happening in your search. So I definitely followed up, and it worked out for me.
Okay.
And I think some companies or some, recruiters that you might connect with would appreciate, you also just opening that line of communication and just, having that sort of like relationship with them. So yeah, following
Yeah,
up is so important, and just also
absolutely.
staying on top.
Yeah,
And there's so
yeah,
many people applying.
correct. Get your
Yeah,
name to
so
the front.
yes, the front of the
Yeah.
line. That's what you want to do. So yeah, following up definitely works. It worked for me.
And let's talk rejection. How can candidates and job seekers handle rejection better? What helped you shift your mindset? Were you rejected? And yeah, what helped you keep positive in that rejection?
So, wow, rejection is hard. I'm not gonna lie. I think, especially when you sort of like looking for something, it can be a bit difficult. But what really helped me, Kelly, is again just redirecting my focus. It's really not me, and all you need is just one yes. So you need to keep going.
Yeah,
You need to keep going. You need to keep, applying, and just making sure that you redirect your focus, redirect your attention to what you can fix,
yeah,
right? So if I get a no from this company, what can I fix, on my resume, my profile, maybe how I did the interview? What can I improve on, so that I can be better prepared for my next one?
yeah,
And like all you need is just that one yes. So you need to keep going. I
yeah,
think that's what kept me motivated, is that it's fine, this could be a no, but it's preparing me for my yes. So I
yeah.
needed to stay prepared. I needed to stay focused, and just make sure that I make the necessary improvements and adjustments to get my yes.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, just thinking about that rejection piece, do you think it's better to get a rejection email or get a rejection phone call, probably more likely to be an email, than to not hear anything at all? And that's in
Yes.
terms of being an applicant that hasn't even reached interview stage yet. So just as an applicant, do you think you need to be told no, you're not proceeding?
I mean, some companies do that, which is absolutely great. It's fine because you get like this, I guess it's like a template, because a lot of them are the same.
Yeah.
And some companies actually personalize it, which is also really, really great.
Mm,
But I think it is better to get a rejection email than not hear anything at all.
mm,
I think I saw a study that I think about 75% of candidates that apply for roles that don't hear anything actually lose interest, and they look for something else.
yeah.
And then, 25% would then sort of like stay and still continue searching and reapply again. So you would probably lose a lot of candidates just not responding to them because then they look for something else and they've lost interest in this job because you haven't
Mm,
replied. But I would say just getting that no is absolutely better than not hearing anything at all. I
yeah.
think what really demotivates people, what demotivated me in my search was not hearing anything at all.
Mm,
I think even that generated no, or that template no
yeah,
would
yeah,
have
yeah.
helped, as opposed to hearing nothing at all. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's an interesting topic because, in as an employer or recruitment person that gets, you're the same, you would understand you get, 80 resumes. And when you respond to 70 people to say your application hasn't been successful, not even to the first round of telephone calls or whatever that looks like, I know from previous experience that you then get a percentage of those people come back to you for feedback as to why. So you're
Hmm.
creating, as an employer, for example, you're actually creating more work for yourself because
Yeah.
now they have a direct contact, the candidate that you've rejected, to contact you and say, what's wrong with my resume? Why didn't I suit this job? I am suitable because of X, Y, and Z. And now you've opened up a whole conversation with
Yes.
potentially, one to two people per job that you're advertising for. So it's really finding a balance between keeping job seekers happy, but also not creating work as an employer to then have your HR and recruitment team having these conversations with people that they're not proceeding with. And so and I know it's difficult for job seekers because they actually want the feedback. But unfortunately, sometimes it's really not, you just can't give everyone the feedback. It's just not
Yeah.
practical. So, I mean, I know I've seen a lot of adverts in our own adverts, Trish, as you know, we say the shortlisted candidates will be contacted. So it's
Yes.
kind of that clause to say we just can't go back to everyone, but hopefully that's
Yes.
better than nothing. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting point that you raise, and I know it's always a topic of
It
conversation
is.
because you have to
Yes,
protect your
absolutely.
brand as an employer or recruiter, but it's sometimes just not practical,
Absolutely.
is it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're not going to reach out to all like hundreds and thousands of people that are
Mm,
applying. I think again, it goes back to relevance as a candidate. You can't
mm.
expect to hear back from a role that you applied for, and you sort of like shooting your shots and hoping it
Yeah,
sticks. And
yeah,
there has to be some kind of intentionality and relevance to it. I can't
yeah,
be applying. I keep using a sales exec, but you can't be applying for a sales exec role. And I want to be doing recruitment, and I've got experience in, something else.
yeah,
Then chances are I'm not going to hear back, and that's the reality.
yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm applying for a role where it's closely related to my skills and experience.
Mm.
Because then chances of hearing back are quite higher as opposed to when I'm applying just to get something and hoping I get something from somewhere. So yeah, it
Yeah.
goes back to individuality with the candidates as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And what small changes do you think employers can make to improve candidate experience now that we're on that topic of what is being
Yeah,
missed in the recruitment process? And that's for
yeah.
employers and maybe us as recruiters to have this conversation.
Absolutely. I think what employers can do is, firstly, a little bit of empathy, because it is hard. I think when you are looking for a role, you sort of like are coming from a place of not necessarily desperation, but you need help, right? So a little bit of empathy will go a long way. So I
Yeah,
think if your employers are responding to candidates or they are reaching out to candidates, if you can send personalized emails, then you can definitely
yeah,
go at it. That also just helps you retain top talent and really good people,
yeah,
that you can sort of like reverse back to and circle back to should the role be open again.
absolutely.
Um, and then I think another thing that they can do is obviously there are automated responses that you can send through. I think in my search, I noticed that there's so many automated responses that I received that were pretty good, and there were some sort of like questionnaires that you needed to fill in about your processes, like, was it helpful, did you get any tips,
Mm,
anything like that. So just best way to sort of like reach out to candidates, but like without having to take up too much of your time,
yes,
of course, but in a way just having those kind of platforms where candidates can still sort of like share their experiences about your organization does also help
yeah.
as well, in making improving your systems and processes, in order to just make it a bit lighter and easy
Mm,
for job
mm.
seekers as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken with some job seekers that have come through, and they may be in the process. You know, we ask, obviously, you in a process with anyone else, and they say, yeah, we've had an interview with a company X, Y, and Z, and I'm still waiting for the outcome, but that was 4 weeks ago. And I'm thinking 4 weeks ago is a long time to be waiting for a job outcome. You should really have had a response by now, particularly if you're at interview stage. I mean, if you haven't heard anything and you've only submitted your resume, you can pretty much say you've probably been unsuccessful. But if you've had an
Yes.
interview and you're still waiting 4 weeks later, I think employers probably need to be more aware of brand awareness in that perspective because if you've actually met with somebody and then you haven't gone back to them to say, look, unfortunately, you're not suitable, but maybe next time, because if your new job, your new hire doesn't turn up on day one or doesn't work out, you can at least go back to the second candidate that you interviewed. I think it's quite short-sighted sometimes when I hear that employers didn't go back to the job seeker at all.
Yeah, no, it happens. That's, they wouldn't go back once they've found their candidate.
Mm.
But it is important to go back because, like you
Yeah,
said, your new hire doesn't show up, and you had another candidate that
yeah,
you've been really suitable for the role that you can go back to. So it is important to just make sure that, even in the list of candidates that you sort of like had in the process for the same role, that you
mm,
keep in touch with them. Let them know that, if another opportunity arises in the business that matches their skill set, or their experience, you will definitely get back to them. So it
yeah.
is important that that happens, but also just allowing the candidate an opportunity to also maybe look for something else. It's so important because now they're sitting, waiting, and hoping. But I don't think that's what people necessarily do. But maybe some do that with they're just waiting for
They're
you to
waiting for
respond.
it. Yeah, especially if
Yeah.
they're really keen, they will sit there and wait for it and think, oh, I connected with them really well. I'm just, waiting to hear something. But and then there's a fine line between understanding as a job seeker, when is the best time to follow up? Like when is it too soon to say, hey, I had an interview. Have you made a decision yet? Because
Yeah.
then you don't want to seem pushy. So there's this
Yes.
whole balance going on between potential employee, and
Yes.
overstepping the mark because you may have been seen as quite good and then you come across as pushy. So they're like, oh, we don't like him or we don't like her anymore. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
it's like
Oh
this
my God.
balance.
Relax.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, if you could tell job seekers one thing today, Trish, given that you've just come out of the job seeking experience, glad to have you on board. What would it be?
Um, so just to go back a little bit on the following up, where they are following up. So the standard, I believe, would be about 5, 7 days after your interview.
Mm,
That would be like a respectful time to follow up. But some companies say, if you don't hear anything from us within 14 days,
yeah.
then you want to maybe follow up on the 14th day and say, hey, is there any feedback? But they would tell you, if you don't hear anything from us, then it's
Yeah.
like you're not going to make it. But what I can say to job seekers is, again, it's really not personal. If you get that no from the one company, it doesn't mean you'll get a no from everyone else. It just needs you to redirect your focus a little bit, see what you can improve, see what you can make better on your profile, your resume, make the adjustments that you need to make for your next application, your next role. So keep going. And another thing is connect. Make sure that you are visible. Make sure that you are connecting with, the relevant managers, the relevant recruiters,
Yeah.
and people who can help you with your next career move. Be a bit proactive with your search as
Yeah.
well. Don't
Yeah.
wait for an application or here's a job, come and apply. Reach out to recruiters. See if there's anything that they are working on that could be a potential match. Um, like we said in the beginning, that some roles are not advertised. So
Correct.
sitting and waiting for something to show up on your screen to say apply does also sort of like play a role in just holding you back. So be a bit proactive with your search and keep a tick list. I had like this little book where I knew that, okay,
Little
today I'm
black
applying
book.
for these companies. And I would just tick it, once I've applied, once I've followed up, I know that, I've applied and I've followed up, haven't heard back, that's a no, it's
Yeah,
okay. How do I redirect my focus for my next application? So,
absolutely.
yeah,
And I think as
yeah,
well, candidates, I speak with candidates all the time, as do you, but speaking with candidates and saying to them, are you on Seek? Are you on LinkedIn? And there are so many candidates that still aren't on either of those platforms. And they, you have to be on those platforms because if you're not in it, you're not going to win it. And,
yeah,
we know employers, recruiters, we're searching for candidates continuously to fill our jobs. And, if you can't find that particular candidate on Seek or LinkedIn and just waiting for job applications to come in, well, you're narrowing the search like, tenfold. Do you
yes,
know what I mean? So
yeah,
I always say to candidates, make sure you're online, you have a presence on those job platforms so that people can find you, not just you searching for the role. It's about you being found. So, that Seek profile needs to be up to date, your LinkedIn profile needs to be up to date and have those keywords in there as well.
yes,
Where we're searching for somebody with MyOb or somebody with, hydraulics experience or somebody with, whatever experience you need. And if they haven't got anything on their profiles, we're not going to find
well,
them. So,
yes, absolutely. No
yeah.
name is also a brand, so you need to be visible. You need to be updating your profile constantly on, these search portals,
Mm,
and just making sure that you do have a presence because then you will be found. So just make sure that you keep updating your profile. So if anything changes, you add a new skill, add
yeah,
that the keywords because we use keywords when we're searching. So you want to
correct.
add those keywords.
Yeah,
You
make
want
sure
to
your
add those
keywords are in
keywords.
there. Yeah,
Absolutely, because you could have the right experience, and you could be the person for the job, but you just don't have those keywords, and it's hard for us to find you, or
yeah,
it's hard for companies or other recruiters to find you. So,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, very insightful, Trish. I do appreciate it. A couple of, I suppose, final takeaways for listeners, for candidates. Um, Rejection doesn't define you. What else?
Yeah, rejection doesn't define you. Be visible.
Mm,
Remember, no name is also a brand, so you want
yes.
to make sure that you are visible so that you can be found. And another takeaway would be proactive with your search.
Yeah,
Be proactive with your search. Keep a tick list. Be intentional as well.
yeah,
I think it's so important to make sure that there is some relevance to the job you're applying for and your
mm,
experience. So again, the keywords,
yeah,
very important to add those on your profile so that you can be found, even when you are applying. So yeah, and just
yeah.
tweak your CV or resume in accordance to the job that you are applying for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all the
Thank
best.
you. Yeah, and I suppose for a hiring perspective, an employer perspective, a couple of key takeaways is, consider how long your recruitment process is taking to return to candidates, protecting your employer brand to make sure that, if you're not going back to candidates, it's probably not ideal. They're going to be going away from the process thinking, I won't apply to them again. Those things are highly important. And for smaller businesses that don't have HR, it is difficult for hiring managers to be across the recruitment process. It's administrative. It's task heavy. But I think it's important from a brand perspective and making sure that the candidate feels seen. I suppose those little simple follow-ups just to say, hey, unfortunately you weren't successful this time. You don't have to make a call. An email is fine. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody wants to have a call to say you've not been successful.
Oh,
They can call later to say
yeah.
why, but the rejection itself, I think, is better in a written form. And then the feedback can come once they've kind of accepted, okay, I didn't get the job, particularly if it's quite, a role that they really wanted. It can be quite defeating, can't it?
Yes, yes,
Mm.
absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that, Kelly. I think, feedback is important, even though you can't feedback to the 100 applicants.
No.
But, the top candidates that you would typically want to revisit their profiles again for other roles, it's so important
Yeah.
to make sure that you let them know and, yeah, and basically send feedback as much as you can. It does help the person in their search, after all.
And we've all been job seekers at one point, right?
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I'm on the other side now,
I
so
know.
I yeah. But we are now, and I'm really, really grateful. But I think it's so important to just keep your head up. It is difficult, and I think also for job seekers and employers, it's so important to just have a level of like empathy
Yeah.
in all of this, and just make sure that you are being cognizant of other people's sort of like it's not like hardship, but it's not easy.
No.
So you need to make sure that everyone is accommodated best way possible. And not made to feel like something is wrong with you and your
Yeah,
profile.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think anyone intends to make anyone feel that way. Hence, I keep
No.
saying it's not personal,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, that feedback can make a huge difference.
Well, thank you so much for your insights, Trish, being a recent job seeker yourself. Like I said, we're very glad here to have you on board. And I hope as job seekers out there watching and maybe employers paying attention to the recruitment process and how best to look after your applicants, that you've taken something from our podcast. Thank you so much for joining. Speak
Thank
to you
you. Thank you for
soon.
having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.